Did you know your body is literally holding on to your unresolved emotions? Yeah. In this video, I am going to be sharing with you a really cool book, and we're going to be going through it and talking about it. So the book is Metaphysical Anatomy by Evette Rose, Volume 1. I guess that means there's lots of volumes, but this is a chunker. So this is enough for me. And before we get into it, I just want to be clear, this is not medical advice. This is not a substitute for any sort of medical things. Make sure, you consult with your doctors and use your own discernment. This is just for educational, entertainment purposes. So with that, let's get into it. My name is Monica, and I want to dive right in. So this Metaphysical Anatomy book is something that I was referred in my Beyond Quantum Healing program. I did this Beyond Quantum Healing certification program, and what that is kind of like an offshoot of past life regression, the method QHHT, quantum hypnosis, oh gosh, what's the other H technique? But the QHHT by Dolores Cannon. So Beyond Quantum Healing is something that was created by someone who studied really closely and worked really closely with Dolores Cannon. And then she created kind of her own offshoot of past life regression work called Beyond Quantum Healing. And that is the technique that I am certified in. And so in that certification program, they talk about this book just briefly. It's just a quick little thing, but something about me is that if I hear a quick little thing and I resonate with it, I grab on and I dive in. This thing is gnarly. We're not going to go through all of this. I'm not going to make this a super long video. I just kind of want to pull out some different things using myself as an example, pull out some different things that I've had, as I opened with, our emotions become trapped in our body if they don't get healed and resolved, and that can result in physical ailments, aches, pains, things. So I just want to use myself as an example of some traumas and things that I have experienced in life and how I find it really interesting that it correlates with medical, physical stuff that I also experienced. If you have ever heard of this book, so Heal Your Body by Louise, this is a much more well-known book. This is a really teeny, easy book that has just quick little references. So this is a much more easy to digest form of this type of stuff, but I really loved I really loved it, felt called to it, so let's dive in. So I'm gonna just first open up to the table of contents, and I'm just gonna quickly, it just has a list here of in alphabetical order. There's so many things. This is all the A things. I'm just gonna kind of go down the list and pick out some of the really big things that I've experienced in my life. And then we're going to dive into what the book says more deeply about the emotional and kind of spiritual stuff behind that. Okay, so the first one is anxiety. Let's see what it says about anxiety. I'm not going to read all of it. As you can see here, it's just very thorough. I'm not going to read it all, just going to pull out pieces. So, prolonged excessive worry about circumstances in life characterizes anxiety disorder. I put disorder in quotes because as the clinical setting, as the DSM, these things are classified as disorders. But I don't necessarily believe in pathology and labeling things as disorders. I think that most, if not all, of diagnosable disorders have roots in trauma. So just a little aside there. It often relates to future uncertainties based on real or imagined events. Unresolved trauma that has piled up causes anxiety. The anxiety is surfacing to push you to change certain patterns and resolve unresolved problems. That is really relatable and interesting. I know that there's been so many times in my life, especially in my 20s, where I had so much anxiety. I have another video where I share about my experience with anxiety and how I am able to have overcome that. And sorry, I'm distracted. My dog was moving from here to there. My brain latches onto everything. Thank you, neurodiversity. So I had so many experiences in my life where I felt so much anxiety, and I realized that this was because I had been conditioned to accept or allow certain things in my life that were not okay. And so it's, so the part where it says the anxiety is surfacing to push you to change certain patterns and resolve unresolved problems. So if there's stuff that you have in your life that like does not feel good, but you're just trying to like pretend, go along, oh, everything's fine, nothing to worry about here, then that emotion doesn't just go away because you're in denial or because you're trying to avoid it. It bubbles up as these feelings, as anxiety. Or if you have unresolved things from your past, that also is trapped in your body and causes you to feel anxiety. So I really relate to this. I think that that's a really powerful thing that probably a lot of you can relate to. Let's see what's up next. Okay, autism. I actually don't know that I've looked at this one because I recently kind of finally accepted that I am on the spectrum. So let's see what this one has to say. I believe that there's a certain predisposition which relates to an ancestor's experience of toxicity in the body. Trauma or toxicity might trigger an ancestral trauma. The key here is that toxicity itself does not cause autism. Rather, it's the invasion of toxicity itself, which might, in the small portion of the population who are predispositioned, create the physical reaction which we call autism. I had also come across this other woman's work lately, I'll link it in the description, talking about how she uses so many like hefty clinical terms, but basically that, I believe that these things are both nature and nurture, right? We're like more naturally maybe inclined to be a certain way, and then also the nurture of our experiences in early childhood. But this woman's work specifically, oh gosh, her name's Kristen or something, I'll put it in the description, but she talks about how she believes like neurodiversity, specifically autism, is basically experiencing trauma in early developmental stages, and instead of like developing everyone's developing at a certain way, in a certain way that you are kind of supposed to if you have a healthy experience, and that people that experience autism often are not able to develop in that healthy developmental way, and instead are developing in a way to basically have to have their system overcome and cope with these adverse experiences. So just a little aside there. Let's see what's next. I don't want to spend too much time on any one thing. I want to kind of get to a few different things. Okay, Bell's palsy. What page are we? So when I was in, when I was in third grade, fourth grade, one of those young grades, I was one of the only girls who would just play basketball with all the boys. And I That was my way of spending my recess, my time at school. And one day, but we didn't play like actually basketball. If y'all like back in the late 90s, whatever, we played, what was it called, like knockout or some game basically where you stand at this line and you try to, there's two people and you try to shoot the ball, and whoever can shoot the ball first into the basket, then you win, and then like whatever, I don't remember all the rules. But that's important because basically like me and this other girl that we're playing were up together and we both started shooting, and then my ball like missed, so I ran to go get my ball, and then she's still trying to shoot and I'm trying to grab my ball and run back so I can beat her and get it in first, right? So I'm running to go get my ball and she's continuing to shoot her ball, and she unintentionally threw the ball and it hit me. And I was wearing glasses in that grade. I used to wear glasses. And so the arm of my glasses here behind my ear, the basketball hit right here on my head and pinched, kind of pressed on where my glasses were. And I still notice, like even when I just did that now and applied a little pressure, my system responds, your body remembers. And anyway, so it hurt. It was like, okay, but we're gonna keep playing. I felt like I was fine. And then later that evening, I was sitting watching TV with family, and I was sitting kind of at an angle like this, looking to the side. And my sister was sitting kind of where you are, and started just yelling at me out of nowhere, like, stop doing that. That's so scary. That's whatever. I'm like, what? Like, what? Literally, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. I was so confused. And she's like, you're not closing your eyes. When you blink, your eyes are just rolling back. And I'm just like, what? Like, I was a little kid. That's like, what? Like, that is so scary. And so, of course, then that kind of initiated, like, what is going on? And long story short, it was a really, really scary, difficult experience. And like just being a kid, all this stuff, right? So they basically came to the conclusion that it was Bell's palsy. And this is nerve damage. So basically for about a year, I could not pronounce my words correctly. I don't know if anyone notices too. Sometimes I might not pronounce my P's and certain things like as precisely as maybe would have been natural otherwise. I don't know. But my face was paralyzed for a year, and my mom would have to come into my room and close my eyelids for me when I was sleeping. How scary. The main memory I have of that is I was taken to this like really funny live action, like comedy-esque type show. Oh, it was like the Gaslight Theater in Sunnyvale or some shit, I don't know. And anyway, it was hilarious. And I was laughing hysterically with a blank face. And I'm really glad that I couldn't see myself in that moment because, wow, how freaking freaky is that? So nerve damage, and basically the doctors said that there's nothing they can do. It just has to, this is just how it is until my nerves repair and regrow. And it took about a year. It was really scary. So let's talk a little bit about what the book says about that. Bell's palsy. You may have experienced a very stressful childhood that made you feel out of control, disrespected, and walked over. Your low self-esteem allows others to walk all over you. You have mastered the ability to control your emotions rigidly, such as anger, resentment, and lack of trust. This also includes feelings of revenge. And that's interesting because some of those, I've been doing emotion code sessions on myself, and some of those are emotions that have come up in those sessions. And most of those I've healed very deeply, but healing is a lifelong thing. Because of this pattern, you find it challenging to judge how stressful, abusive, invasive, and traumatic your circumstances were and perhaps still are. Your threshold for enduring abusive circumstances becomes higher and higher over time. There is tension and conflict between what you see and what you feel. Your need to express this conflict has become so great that it numbs and paralyzes. You have withstood much judgment, insult, criticism from others, especially influential people. As a result, you are very judgmental of yourself. There seems to be a part of you that unconsciously feels you must stick with the stressful and disempowering circumstances. You feel there's no way out, and as any type of change just might break the thin twig that is holding your life together. Yeah. Anyway, so I'll just dive into a little bit of my history with that. So around to the best that I have been able to gather, around ages 5 through 7-ish, somewhere in there, I was enduring childhood sexual abuse from my sister, and at the same time was feeling very criticized, judged, just and also not emotionally supported, kind of emotionally neglected, left alone with my feelings. And this caused me to feel like so many things that were mentioned here. And specifically, I was not able to stand up for myself. It sells, low self-esteem and stuff. Like when I had anger or that anger, that resentment, those feelings come up, I was blamed for my anger and told that I had anger problems and given an anger management book for kids and told to go fix myself, basically. And I was not honored in my anger. And that is an experience that a lot of people faced in childhood, of having parents who were not able to deal with our emotions. And so instead of being supported in them and understood in them, right, anger is really our body telling us something's not right here. I have a boundary that's being crossed, or some boundary that needs to be made. And instead of me being able to have that honored, I was just, that anger had to be repressed in order for me to survive in my family system. Yeah, so you've mastered the ability to control your emotions rigidly. That was like about the time this Bell's palsy happened, is when that abuse had kind of wrapped up maybe at that time. My memory is still a bit fuzzy. If anyone is familiar with PTSD, that's incredibly normal, and that's not a sign that she's making it up, it didn't happen, she doesn't remember correctly. No, that's actually like science and trauma and how your brain works. So I basically had to hold in my anger and hold in all of these feelings, and it was incredibly stressful and was still stressful at that time, because I was growing up feeling so many deep, heavy feelings, and as a highly sensitive person, feeling so much and having to shove it all down, having to pretend like everything was normal, having to endure abusive circumstances, and then the tension and conflict between what you see and what you feel, right? So I was feeling all of this is so wrong, there's something so wrong, and then what I see or what I'm allowed to express or what I have to adhere to is everything's fine, just be quiet and go along with the program. And your need to express this conflict has become so great that it numbs and paralyzes. So that was what was going on in my internal system. I adopted that judgment of myself that, oh, I'm bad and wrong for feeling these things. And really just so many internal shadows and internal splits and things being created because of these circumstances that I was in. I unconsciously felt like I must stick with the stressful and disempowering circumstances, right? Like as a kid, you don't have a choice. You can't, if you can't fight with anger and you can't flight, you can't run away, you're literally like, you live there, you can't leave. That's not how it works when you're a kid. The only other option is freeze and fawn, right? Freezing and just dissociating, and fawning and just going along with the program and trying to, using my perceptive abilities and my pattern recognition and my sensitive nature to adopt really being super empathic and tuning into others and enduring and coping with the situation that I was in. And yeah, feeling like there's no way out, there's no way to change. So this is a really huge one that maybe not a lot of people can relate to having Bell's palsy, but I just thought that it was such an obvious mirror for what was going on in me in that time. And of course, that's not to say that, how do I want to say this? There's different lines of belief, and I'll just speak to what I believe. Trust what you believe and use your own discernment. But I believe that when these things are inside of our body, all of the things I talked about having to be held in our body, then we unconsciously have a certain frequency, a certain vibration that resonates and attracts other things that resonate with that vibration, right? So it's not like to blame that, oh, because I had this trauma, then I called in being injured in this way, in that like more shaming, blaming way that sometimes is said in spiritual spaces. It's more like I was resonating at a certain place, that then the other things that also resonate at that frequency in that kind of becomes an energetic match to me. And then in my experience of having Bell's palsy, then my caregivers were a lot more giving of attention and caretaking of me, because there was a physical manifestation of what was happening on the inside when they couldn't help me deal with or be with what was going on for me on the inside. Then it manifested physically, and people can't really ignore when something is seen physically. I'll stop there and maybe we'll do one more. Let's see, do I want to do that one or this one? I'll just quickly do both of these. So bladder problems. So along with childhood sexual abuse in general, there's a lot of tension that gets held in that space in our body. And as a kid, I did have a lot of different issues in that realm, not in that realm, but in that region of me. And so it says, people store much of their daily emotional irritations in their bladder and the urinary tract. When a person is overwhelmed with a lot of stress, irritation, or feeling pissed off, these areas can physically surface. It often starts when a person is trying really hard to resist being controlled by an authority figure. You feel a great deal of anger towards someone who is challenging you, because expressing yourself towards this person makes you feel unsafe. You often resort to aggression to protect yourself emotionally. The aggression forms a buffer between you and a bully or influential person challenging your self-worth or territory. You may have had a conflicting relationship with an authority figure, like a parent. And I think I'll stop there. What I just shared makes it pretty obvious what my experience of that was like. And then the last one I want to talk about, because I've not had like an official diagnosis. Basically, there's no way for them to diagnose this without surgery, but I think that I might be have been having like endometriosis type challenges and pain. So I want to get into this one because I feel like it's something that At least when I got into learning more about this, I was realizing how freaking more common it seems to be with women, and I don't think that's just a coincidence. Let's see what it says. Okay, endometriosis. The first line, I'm like, yeah, okay. Endometriosis. You have suppressed your creativity and passion in life. You might have a fear of having children, as your own childhood experiences may have been traumatic. You have a fear your childhood history will repeat itself. You may also have an attachment to your independence, and this is where you feel most powerful. Bearing a child might challenge your ability to be independent of others. You might feel that depending on others will inevitably invite circumstances that will make you feel controlled and trapped. Responsibilities have consumed your life. A lack of guidance and having to fend for yourself. You need a break from this strenuous and challenging cycle. You seem to feel quite resentful of being a female. Now, consciously, I enjoy being a female, but I can relate to this. Always pulling the short end of the rope in society. You have seen women being treated unfairly, mistreated, or disrespected, causing you to avoid experiencing the same treatment. You feel unable to access your feminine power, something I have been working with for quite a while. You feel your foundation is brittle and there's no solid ground to fall back on whenever you face challenges. This may cause you to feel very insecure, scared, or unsure in your ability to cope with life. Unsure of your ability to cope with life. Everything until this point has been hostile and traumatizing. You often revert to an aggressive state to keep yourself safe and to establish clear boundaries. You might feel under attack, either verbally or physically, by influential females in your life. Your experience with love may have been intensely traumatic and destructive and left a deep emotional scar. You want to be creative, yet feel controlled, attacked, or judged. You don't feel safe expressing yourself or being loved by the people you should feel safe with. Communicating your emotions, concerns, or fears was never an option. I'll stop there. So yeah, also, with what I shared, that main bit, I think that makes it really clear how that relates for me. I thought it was important for me to read some of this because, like I said, I think there's a lot more women experiencing this. And I am not saying that it's not an actual medical thing. I am just saying that there are emotions and traumatic experiences and emotions because of that stuck in our body, that then instead of them healing and our body being able to recover, they are stuck in our body and they manifest in these physical ways. So yeah, I've been working on being more creative, while I was in my healing journey and I was being really private about my healing journey, I was outwardly, showing that I was journeying off as starting a business as an artist and starting to come into more of my creative expression. I've always been a really creative person. And that's also, self-empowerment and sharing my voice and sharing my creativity in this way now and getting more comfortable being on camera and sharing my voice. So yeah, that is absolutely not all that's in this book. There are so many pages on pages of every concussion, dyslexia, esophagus problems, just seizures, so many things. This book covers so many things, and I think that it has been really interesting. It doesn't change the past, obviously, but it has given me ways to understand things that might be beneficial for me to heal more deeply, because I can recognize if they have already kind of healed, if I've already been able to kind of overcome things, and I can say, oh, that was like Bell's palsy, that was something I experienced in the past. I can kind of have a different understanding of that. Or things that are ongoing, I can understand maybe where I need some more support, maybe where I need to be more creative, and just learning more about myself, learning more about yourself. It's so empowering. So thanks so much for being here with me. If you are curious about working with me, I have that link for the information on that in the description box, and I'll see you next week.